Let's get to Herdline. The Eagles, Colin, they're back on track after that third straight win. They blew out the Cincinnati Bengals. I mean, Jalen Hurts is on fire. Coming off his 4-touchdown performance last week, he credits his success to learning from last season's failures, saying, I think our season started last year, from my vantage point, is something I've learned a ton from, and I think it's benefited us now. Eagles, big home favorites against the reeling Jaguars. You believers yet in Philly?
Well, I'm not. I don't think you can win Super Bowls or conference championships if you have an average coach, unless you have great coordinators. I'm not sure the Eagles do. I like the Eagles this weekend, even though it's 7.5. I think because when Philadelphia is rolling, I think if you said what are the 3 or 4 best rosters in football, I would go Detroit, San Francisco, Baltimore now looks pretty good, and then I would say Philadelphia. And I think they're one of those teams where you cannot watch them play and not see the power, athleticism, speed. So the minute they have an impressive win, we all come roaring back to the Eagles. Yeah. You know, a lot of teams win. The Rams are super young. They can win, and they don't blow you away. They just, like, schematically McVay and Stafford win. When Philly wins and blows somebody out, it's impressive looking because they have so many great players. So I get everybody back on board. I still hesitate with this team.
I think they have 4 new defensive starters, and if you look at the transitions they've made from that season opener against the Packers, remember the Packers were carving them up and down the field with the big plays. You watch that Bengals game, and the secondary's starting to come together. I'm just Philadelphia and Washington in that division have to make Jerry Jones really nervous, dude. I don't see how the Cowboys overtake either of those teams unless there's some massive injury.
Yeah.
Dallas is not looking good, man. Next story, let's go to the Cowboys.
Okay. I wanted to hear what Colin had to say more to that, but J-Mac didn't allow it. Okay. So Colin says that the Eagles cannot win an NFC championship game or, Super Bowl or whatever without great coordinators or great coaching. And I'll say, what about Fangio? Is he not a good coordinator? Are you saying that it could only be great offensive coordinators or great offensive head coaches? Because Fangio is a great defensive mind. He's literally an all-time great defensive mind. He pretty much is responsible for how defenses are, all played now around the NFL. So to kind of downplay Fangio doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. But even with that said, I mean, what about in 2017 when the Eagles literally won the Super Bowl with backup quarterback Nick Foles? It was Doug Peterson, this great, amazing, all-time great coach. Because Colin did a whole thing where our Colin was right, Colin was wrong. And he goes, you know what, I was wrong on Doug Peterson. He's not as good of a coach as I thought he was. So then is it Frank Reich was this elite, all-time great coordinator for the offense, what is it, Jim Schwartz? Jim Schwartz, for the defensive coordinator. I think that was the defensive coordinator that year. So I'm a little confused by that. I get what he's saying. I lean towards great coaches as well, right? Like I definitely follow that philosophy, but I think there's also a threshold where it just has to be good enough, especially when you have a great roster. So if the roster is so great, right, then I don't think you maybe need elite coaching, elite coordinating. It certainly helps. There's no question about it. And you are absolutely at a disadvantage for versus other great coaching. Just look at the Chiefs versus the Ravens, right? The difference in those games was coaching. So I wholeheartedly agree with that, right? No question. But if you're talking about this division, right, or this conference and the NFC as a whole, right, I would say Ben Johnson, offensive coordinator, absolutely gets the leg up. But he's going up a great defensive coordinator in Fangio. And then who's the great defensive coordinator for the Detroit Lions? I wouldn't say that he's so great. He's not bad. I'm not saying that he's awful or trash or this or that, but I'm just saying, like, it's not like, earth-shattering, right? Packers, Matt LaFleur, definitely a great coach. But again, is that roster, that youth, are they ready to win? Is Jordan Love playing? Is he healthy? What's going on with that? Right? 49ers, great offensive head coach. Shanahan, that defense is awful right now. So again, everything kind of has to be put in context here. So I wouldn't be so quick just to be like, oh, well, the Eagles can't win because they're at a coaching deficit, and that roster's great, but the coordinating isn't there and the coaching isn't there. I just wouldn't be so quick to say that necessarily. I don't think that's 100% fair, but I do think it is something that needs to be considered. I talked about this also with Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills. They're being at a deficit of coaching. It is absolutely undeniably a thing, but sometimes when the roster is so high, like again, if Josh Allen had the Eagles roster of last year, if he was going in there with AJ, Devontae, Saquon, he's probably beating the Chiefs in the playoffs, right? Like I would take that team ready to go, right? Especially if the defense is healthy. So it's interesting because then again we talk about great offensive head coach for Tua in Miami Dolphins, and yet they couldn't do anything against the Kansas City Chiefs in their playoff game. So it's not so cut and dry. It's not all or nothing. It's a combination between, do you have the right coaching staff? Do you have the right team? Do you have the right weapons, the quarterback, all of those things? So a little too dismissive, too quick to be like, the Eagles. I get the lack of trust in the Eagles. I talked about this, I think, yesterday or a couple of days ago. I forget now already. But I get the lack of trust of Eagles. Okay, 22, boom. They went to the Super Bowl, let's go. Play away from winning. Then 23, they were winning games, but it felt wrong the whole time. It just didn't feel right. Then they collapsed, right? Then they truly collapsed, losing really, really bad games versus bad teams. So now everyone's like, kind of scarred from that. And then the beginning of this season, and I said this was death by 1,000 paper cuts. I said that this was just really bad luck because they beat the Packers and they have some injuries. And then they have a tough loss, and now it makes everything look so much worse than it really is because you're using the last season as a reference point. The last game that they played was against the Bucs, and they get rocked, right? And then you're going into this season, and they beat the Packers, but there's some turnover, so people are like, I don't know, right? And then that trend kind of continues. You have a tough loss versus the Falcons, and then you get rocked by the Buccaneers, and again, injuries, all of this, and so everything just kind of made it look like this is a problem, right? And then you beat the Browns, but it's like not that convincing. So I get the lack of confidence around it. But that's why throughout this whole season, I tried to be like, well, let's look at what happened. Let's look at the storyline of this team. 2 new coordinators last season, right? That was a problem. They were not good. Right. So so this team kind of was struggling. So it wasn't a big collapse. If anything, it was amazing that they were able to even come away with wins. Like, if anything, it shows the resilience that they had. They just could only hold on for so long. And then this year, the team is going to be significantly better than they were last year, which has proven to be the case. But then they're missing key players. It's really difficult to win if you're missing A.J. Brown and Devontae and starting linemen. Like, that's just a hard thing to do for anyone unless you have an elite defense. And it's hard to do when you have 2 new coordinators, right? Because coordinators, especially when they're new, they're really focusing on what's in front of them. And when you remove those pieces, it's like, well, wait a second, this isn't what we've been working on all this time. Now I got to kind of go back from ground zero here. I got to start from scratch. And when that happens, you need a coordinator who really knows the team, who really knows the quarterback to be able to survive that. And that's not the case when you have new coordinators or a new head coach, whatever it may be. It's significantly harder to troubleshoot because you're like, well, wait a second. I just figured out who this quarterback is and who this offense is when we have AJ and Devontae and Saquon and Lane and this and that. And now I'm going to take away some of these pieces. It's like, well, wait a second. I'm realizing that Jalen Hurts actually, when he doesn't have AJ and Devontae, he's showing maybe he doesn't have as much trust in this receiver. And actually, I'm realizing that we maybe can't go down the field as much. Like, it's so much more troubleshooting. So everything just kind of started to compound and make this season look even worse or harder than potentially it really is. So I get that the Eagles have to continue to earn the trust and respect of fans, media, whatever it may be. I do get that. And again, as I've also confessed too, it's like I'm still waiting to see more from the Philadelphia Eagles, right? Like nobody ever wants to feel fooled. Nobody ever wants to be like, the Eagles are the best team in the NFL. That's right. They're going to win the Super Bowl. Like J-Mac said, don't be surprised if they win the Super Bowl. And you feel foolish if you're like, the Eagles, they're going to win the Super Bowl. They're going to be great. Let's go. And then they get rocked by the Jaguars, right? Or they lose by 10 to the Jags, right? And then you're like, oh my God, I feel dumb now. So I get the hesitancy. I get it. Right, I really, really, really do, but I think that the hesitation as this season continues will be wrong, and I think we'll maybe see where Colin was right, where Colin was wrong, and he's going to be like, listen, Philadelphia Eagles fans, I was wrong. I thought Nick Sirianni was out of control with this team, and I was starting to question Fangio and Kellen more, but this team is humming. They're clearly a top team in the NFL, and, you'd be a fool to count them out. I think this team can definitely get to an NFC Championship game and, dare I say, win. And then there you go. That'll be the clip. So we'll see if that ends up being true. I'm not saying I'm predicting it 100%. I'm not saying it's 100% going to be there, but it'll certainly be interesting. I'm having a lot of fun watching all these teams, and the Eagles have definitely been one of the more interesting teams as this season has unfolded. So I'm sure there will still be plenty of ups and plenty of downs for sure. But those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think about the Philadelphia Eagles? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment, so whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions, let's get in some fights, but ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and I'd absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to, something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're on our way to doing it. And please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help with the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much. See you next time.